Welcome to the People Relations Podcast, the podcast series brought to you by People Relations HR Consulting, where we talk with business and HR leaders around the globe. In each episode, we will discuss exclusive insights, strategies, and advice to help you make better people decisions in your business. For show notes and incredible bonus resources, simply visit www.peoplerelations.com.au. Okay, let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the show. Great to have you along. I'm thrilled to introduce our guest for today's episode, Pathinather. With a remarkable career spanning over 2 decades in HR leadership, Padmi has held pivotal HR roles at very well-known companies such as Pfizer, General Electric, Healthcare, ResMed, and more. And most recently, the Chief People Officer at Arriva Group. We are in for a great conversation with a true HR leader. Welcome, Padmi.
Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for connecting with me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today.
This is fantastic to have you along. So you have extensive HR experience providing support, even across many countries, like around 38 countries and in various industries. Can you tell our listeners more about yourself and your incredible career until today?
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, Pamela. I guess by way of background, I've had the very good fortune of actually living in 4 different countries, and I gained my education and qualifications across 2. And even more fortunate, as you said, Pamela, to have led people and culture functions across multinationals, across the Australia, Asia Pacific, EMEA, and the Americas regions. So I guess for me, during the past 30 years, I've worked for purpose-driven organizations and have very much that time working across the spectrum of healthcare industries, from medical devices, pharma, digital health, and more recently a small stint in allied health. And I've also supported non-for-profit organizations that provide community service for humanitarian settlement, employment services, and supporting people with disabilities. So you're right, I've worked for GE, Pfizer, ResMed, really great organizations, and then did a wonderful stint in SSI, Settlement Services International, and more recently at Arriva.
That is a fantastic career. And I am sure with that comes a lot of learning and overcoming a lot of challenges. So as a business leader, what are the biggest HR or people management challenges that you have faced in all these organizations, and how did you address them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think one of my first challenges really is in my regional and global roles that I held at Pfizer and both at ResMed was the complexity of leading a diverse and dispersed team of people and culture leaders. And often, that presented the challenges of trying to align some of our HR practices with local regulations and the cultural nuances. And I guess to address this, we really established some global frameworks of consistency where, we allowed that flexibility for regional adaptation, but also that space around regular cross-functional communication and collaboration helped us to understand what the local needs were without compromising on the overarching global goals. I think for us, the golden rule that we set up really at the beginning from a global perspective was to define that process. And we only would step out of those processes if it was local, legal, and regulatory requirements. So that was really important. That was the only caveat that we would step out. I guess for the second challenge is around organizational change and implementing some of those transformative changes such as restructuring or mergers and acquisitions and process redesign. We speak a lot about process redesign around the people experience now. And in most instances, some of this happened concurrently. And so that tends to create a lot of resistance and uncertainty amongst some employees. And I guess, to navigate some of these challenges, we adopted a very comprehensive change management strategy, especially at Pfizer. And we spent a lot of time in transparent communications about what was the reason for change, what was changing, why did we need the change, what were the consequences of not changing, and provided lots of opportunities for people to be part of creating that roadmap for implementation. And I think the best involving people in that process, addressing their concerns, and that really enabled a smoother transition and transformation.
Absolutely, Padmi. So bringing people to the conversations and gathering their feedback and getting them involved is one of the key principles of change management. And I'm sure you've been through a lot that you're saying in organizations as big as Pfizer, especially in the last few years, as we all know. But we are talking about the last decade or so, where the world has changed drastically. So organizations have had to adjust to these changes, whatever that means for the specific industries, countries, and so on, but also adjusting to the future, right? And trying to prepare for the future.
Absolutely. And I think, really that space around the future is now more so moved away from those technology integrations and solutions, which was so critical for the time of the pandemic. And then I think most recently, I think the shift is now towards employee well-being and engagement. And I think engagement has always been something that's been close to the hearts of HR. But I think now that holistic approach to employee well-being is so critical, in prioritizing their well-being has been fundamentally important. And I remember during that COVID period at my time with SSI, we initiated a number of wellness programs and mindfulness programs and provided some key tips to survive and build their resilience. And we brought in flexible work arrangements that had to work at an individual level, at a team level, at a business level, but also at a client level, because we still have to provide the different types of services to our clients on site during a pandemic, during lockdown. So it was a very emotionally challenged period for all concerned: HR, team members, organizations, C-suite executives, our team members on the ground, and also our participants and our clients and our customers. So, we spent a lot of time in really understanding how do we support people with mental health, really giving them first aid training around that space. We set up some work health and safety committees and really trying to stay on top of the whole vaccination policy piece. And that brought in a lot of conversation as well. But for me, I've always leveraged every organization I've gone along, and I was able to bring some of my Pfizer leaders in the network and medical professors and local ministers to talk to the staff at SSI to really help them understand the value of immunization and the history of immunization. And so that helped really get a very strong uptake as well on the vaccination piece, which now obviously is something in the past.
Yes, but actually, you work for Pfizer. You were the HR lead there for many years, but before the pandemic. So you could leverage your expertise by working in such a company that had key role to help us get out of the pandemic and developing the vaccines. So you could leverage your expertise and your connections with the new company you were working for at the time.
Yeah, that was very fortunate. And actually, Wyeth was an organization that Pfizer acquired many years ago, and I was part of that integration and merger, and that's where most of our vaccination portfolio along with oncology came along as well to the Pfizer remit. And so I think that experience was invaluable, and really continuing to build those relationships and keeping those relationships till today, I can see how that's been able to have a really good impact on what's happening in our work today.
Absolutely. But can you share a specific example for our listeners on how effective HR strategies have a really positive impact in terms of the company growth or the company bottom line?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. And I think one notable example was how effective we've put in place in terms of a HR strategy was my time at ResMed, really. It's a global leader in medical devices for sleep apnea and other respiratory disorders. And the context was that ResMed was experiencing rapid growth, which was fantastic, and due to an increasing demand for its products and its services. And this growth obviously posed some opportunities for us in terms of talent acquisition and really onboarding and retaining our people. And the company's expansion across these geographic regions, we had to take a very cohesive approach to HR practices while respecting some of those local differences. And all along, we wanted to make sure that no matter where you were in the world, you had a very similar and seamless people experience. So we created a number of cross-functional teams and led an implementation of some great comprehensive talent management strategies that really address some of these challenges and aligned to our growth objectives. And I think we enhanced our talent acquisition space in terms of revamped our entire recruitment process to attract some of the top tier talent. That meant that, I had to look at installing a TA team across APAC as well as EMEA, and also work to establish a very good enterprise relationship with LinkedIn so that we can actually leverage some of the digital platforms for targeted recruitment.
How many people were you hiring in the region at the time? What was the growth that you were expecting?
Oh, it was at least above 30% growth. So it was quite significant. We were going into new markets as well. And certainly going into new markets, we needed to be able to understand where the talent was. And, we're setting up digital hubs in Ireland at that time, as well as a space in Nova Scotia as well, really uplifting that, and as well as Singapore. So it was quite a diverse group of talent that we were trying to tap into.
Wow, big work. From your perspective nowadays, what are the top 3 HR initiatives or strategies that all businesses should be prioritizing to have an engaged workforce?
First one I would pick is definitely around that space around employee development programs. I think we really do need to continuously look at investing in learning and development opportunities and programs for people. And that comes in a whole range of different structured learning, mentoring and coaching and leadership development. And really that value of also learning from your peers, and can't underestimate people learning from each other is a really good concept for a community of practice. And I think the second area is really keeping in track with that effective work-life balance and, the wellbeing programs, as we mentioned earlier, and understanding the flexible work arrangements. What does that look like? Many people are looking at the 4-day work week. Does that really work for your organization, for your people? Have you got the right number of staff to support that as well? Financially, is that something that you can afford? Those are some of the key considerations. And I think that mental health support around psychosocial hazards, all of that is really about your wellbeing programs. The last area is around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think you really can't underestimate the value of having a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce. That really fosters innovation and collaboration and that strong sense of community. And I think there's a number of things that you can do in your DE&I practices and through your employee resource groups as well, and really bring people as part of the journey and the conversation.
And Padmi, the way to ensure diversity inclusion initiatives from a talent acquisition perspective, meaning that you ensure you bring people to the business that will value to the organization, to the culture, but on the other hand as well, ensuring that you equip and inform and educate your existing employees. What is the way to go about having a diverse workforce?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great question. And I think for me, there's a number of different ways. And I think you start off by looking at how are you positioning your actual job advertisements? Is it very inclusive language or non-inclusive language? And I think that, you've got to take out those biases that could be as part of your advertising campaign that you might put out there. And I think further to that, I think it's really important that you have on the interview panel, for example, people with diverse lived experiences as well. So from the organizations that I've worked in the past, like the SSI, you'd have someone with a disability, you'd have someone, First Nations background, if that's what you're trying to recruit in that space as well, or someone from the LGBTI community. So it just depends on, making sure that you have the very broad diversity of thought, diversity of gender, diversity of cultures as well, just making sure that you're constantly pulling out the non-biases in a hiring interview process. It's great that we have a number of digital tools to help us, but sometimes you've got to be really mindful of those tools also potentially not picking up the diversity of our people.
Mm-hmm. In particular, in Australia as well, we have a very multicultural population.
Yeah, and I think diversity sometimes can look at it as diversity by default, right? I mean, you look at your workforce and you think, well, by default, we have very multicultural, diverse workforce. But is that what you talk about diversity? And do you really understand the cultural nuances in making sure that people feel like they belong and they have a voice in that organization? I think that's really most important. And I think that's where with all these employee resource groups, people feel like they want to be part of the strategy and the vision and be able to contribute from their lived experience. And I think quite often when you try to put together your corporate strategy and your goals, if you're not including that fabric of your people from those diverse groups, you will miss out on those little nuances that, not anyone can think about other than those diverse groups. So a lot of activities also take place at the community level, and we really can't underestimate what happens at a community group level. And engaging your external community leaders and really bringing them to be part of your strategy sessions to make sure that you are creating your products or your services that are going to accommodate and support your workforce as well as your clients that you're servicing. That's really critical, making sure that alignment is there for lived experience.
Absolutely spot on. You mentioned before that employee engagement has always been a key area for businesses and HR leaders throughout the years. When we started our interview today, what are the tips that you have from your experience until the date?
Look, I think, as a leader, I've always learned so much from leading diverse teams, and it's with varying abilities as well. And I think there's a great book by Liz Wiseman on impact players, and pretty quickly know and can make an assessment on your teams in terms of who are your key contributors and what's the difference between an impact player, and collectively look at playing to their strengths. And that's where I've always started in terms of looking at someone's strengths. But I think some of the key tips that I could really offer out there is making sure that you have a very clear vision and purpose. I think, making it compelling, and how people actually in your organization can align and contribute to that vision is fundamentally critical. To engage people and motivate people, you've got to have open and transparent communications. I think that's fundamentally key, and making sure that there's regular forums for opportunities for them to give input into the direction of the organization, and so that you get their buy-in. And everyone loves to feel recognized and appreciated. So that's really important, making sure you have your quarterly town halls where you're recognizing people based on the values that they align to the organization, or it could be a number of other competencies and capabilities or great awards that you have. And peer-to-peer recognition as well. That really drives a wonderful sense of belonging and inclusion, and doesn't have to be led from the top, which is fantastic. And I think the other area around having an engaged workforce is giving them autonomy and empowerment, making them feel that they have the opportunity to be made accountable, but also shape the organization in the future. And I think that's a really important key.
Absolutely. Great advice. Thank you, Padmi. Something that you mentioned is the quarterly town halls where you get everyone together. And again, use it as a good time for celebration, for recognition. You can decide how frequent they need to be depending on your business. But I think that's a great advice. Use the time for providing business updates, learning from mistakes, ensuring that you're communicating the type of culture that you want, and also recognizing and celebrating success. I think that's a very good advice that has worked wonders for many organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've done that in a number of different ways as well. And every culture is different. Every organization is different, how they choose to do it. And we certainly called it a lessons learned and reflection session, and pretty much did it after each very large, complex program of work. And we brought in pretty much all the stakeholders from the different cross-functional teams, and really had a very standard script around what worked well, what didn't work so well, and what can we have done differently next time. And it was an opportunity not so much to critique, but so much so that we can actually grow from it. And what can we reach for the next time that we're trying to do something similar? And so that was great, because that then created us the opportunity to create a playbook in the future. Because each time we did something, we would update our playbook, and then we knew exactly what levers to pull accordingly the next time we were faced with a similar challenge.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. And on top of it is everyone is on the same page. We all know what's happening with a specific project or client. So that's a fantastic idea. Padmi, in your opinion, what would listeners need to be doing in order to prepare for the future of work?
For me, the future of work really is being shaped by the various trends that we see now, and the shifts in technology, the work dynamics as well, and the societal expectations. And I think this is an evolving landscape for us. Some of the key things are understanding that remote and hybrid work is very much here to stay. I know many organizations are trying their way back into getting people back into the office 4 days a week or 5 days a week. And that requires a certain level of consultation, because you've got to understand that the way people now do work is different and they've learned some different ways of operating during the pandemic, and that was at a global level. So we've just got to be really mindful of how we communicate that and consult that with our organizations. I think automation and AI is here to stay. Everyone's talking about ChatGPT and all the other AI functionalities. And we need to understand that some of those routine tasks are now increasingly being automated. as a human. You're not being replaced, but your job is being enhanced and giving you an opportunity to do higher order, more engaging things, more time with your client or more time with your internal stakeholders or your external government relations or whatever it might be, and less time doing the mundane, tedious tasks. So I think that's really key. I think the other area is really around continuous learning and understanding the space around soft skills and digital literacy as well. I think making sure that you understand how to read your data and keep your data current to drive those informed decisions around what your strategy looks like. And the soft skills around communications and empathy and adaptability and continuing collaboration, I think they are going to be really critical. And I already mentioned about diversity and inclusion, but I think the other thing that seems to be a trend is around environmental and social responsibility. And organizations are really focusing on sustainability and social responsibility, and really familiarizing yourselves with some of these concepts can really contribute positively to your workplace and society. And a lot of people feel that this is very aligned to the EVP. Why people sign up to join an organization is because of their ESG.
Exactly what you promise to your staff, and that's another way as well to attracting talent, ensuring that. Yes, absolutely. Do you have any recommendations about what is the best hybrid work model? How does it look like? Is it 3 days from home, 2 days from the office? What do you think is ideal?
Well, I don't think I really have an ideal model at this stage, because I think it has to work at those different levels, at an individual level, at a functional, at a team, and at the client level. So if you're client facing and you're doing service delivery and, you've got a government funded program that says you need to keep your doors open, then you need to make sure that you've got staff there all the time. But it's about, do you have enough of a workforce to schedule accordingly to that service delivery need, right? From that aspect. So I think, for me, it's more about when you're also coming into the office, why are you coming into the office for? And many organizations are doing we've gone away from the pizza lunches and learns and things like that. And I think we want to create an opportunity for people to come into the workplace, but not sit behind their desk, but co-create and collaborate in different types of small projects or stretch assignments. That's where you're going to get people coming back and talking together again. I think that's where innovation happens and creativity happens. So I think as long as you know what those levers are for your organization, I think that's most important.
Exactly. So more about really thinking what works for the business and for your people. Fantastic. Padmi, that was very insightful. I appreciate all the valuable experience that you bring into us in our episode today. It's been a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the People Relations Podcast. We hope that today's discussion helps you find new ways to make better people decisions within your business. For additional insights and resources, remember to visit our website at peoplerelations.com.au. If you found value in this episode, please like and share the show with your friends who are dedicated to running and growing their businesses. We can't wait to have you back next time for more great conversations. Until then, take care and see you soon.